Welcome, everyone, to our City Council meeting tonight on May 28th, 2024. And we are grateful that Candy Navas is here to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I am ready.
Thank you so much, Candy. We're grateful to have Candy's husband, Pastor Oscar Navas, here from Casa de Dios. Thank you for being here to offer our prayer tonight.
God bless everyone. If you can, please, bow your heads. We'll appreciate, and let's pray. There's a prayer in Psalm 33. It says, "Great blessings belong to those who have the Lord as their God. He chose them to be his own special people. The Lord looked down from heaven and saw all the people. From his high throne, he looked down at all the people living on earth. He created every person's mind, and he knows what each one is doing." Our Father in heaven, we pray that your name will always be kept holy. We pray that your kingdom will come, that what you want will be done here on earth, the same as is in heaven. I said, God of heaven, the great and awesome God, loyal to his covenant and faithful to those who love him and obey his commands. Look at me, listen to me, pay attention to this prayer of your servant that I'm praying day and night in intercession for your servants, the leadership of Bountiful City, confessing our sins in the Bountiful City, and I am including myself and our ancestors among those who have sinned against you. Heavenly Father, I declare wisdom from heaven for our government leaders to lead us, your people, for each one to accomplish their task with success every single day. I declare blessings and protection for them and their loved ones. Thank you for choosing Bountiful City as your city, where we beg you that your presence dwells in each heart in the entire atmosphere. I pray, Father, for our community, for their hearts to be stirred up for compassion. Father, I pray in the name of Jesus for the social challenges that we confront every day, that we are facing in our city, for a pouring of your love and mercy in every family and individuals to change our city of Bountiful. I pray for a spiritual, emotional, and physical healing to all those who are devastated for any illness. Just as Prophet Elijah threw salt into the bad waters that caused the city to be sick and the land sterile. Save our city from disasters, regardless of their nature. I pray for fertility, for a great commercial blooming and booming in this town, in this city, that when our city neighbors ask how you are blessed, where you get this from, we will say, God brought us healing and prosperity to our city and bring all cities together to work together and lift up your name on high. In the name of Jesus, I break any curse thrown by our ancestors in our city. I beg you for our police and fire department, for their safety, courage, protection, and wisdom to know what to do exactly, for them to know what is good to do and what is not, for their fantastic training, but because you are with them, not only because of the training, because you save them and you guide them and you protect them. I pray for our medical staff, for their safety, for more healing inside, and as a reward for their dedication and sacrifice, for all our city to have great health and a long life for them. And I pray for the growth and outreach of your church that carries your holy gospel in this city. In Jesus' almighty name, we pray, and by the authority invested in me by the Holy Spirit, we all say, Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. What a beautiful prayer. Thank you for being here tonight. We are grateful that you could come, and we understand if you need to leave, but you're welcome to stay.
I'm going to stay a few minutes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Candy. We now have our public comment period. If you'd like to speak, you have 2 minutes. Please come forward and state your name and address. Seeing no public comment, we'll move to consider approval of minutes of previous meetings. And you had a question, were there some minutes that you weren't ready to approve?
Yes, Mayor, I was wondering if we could delay the approval of the minutes, or we could discuss it right now, but there's a change that I would propose on page 213. And I'm happy to wait and do this at the next meeting or tonight.
I also had a change. Do you know the language that you would want to replace it with, or do you want to delay that?
I could do either,
Okay.
depending on what your action is.
Okay. So, so the change that I was requesting was on page 219. It was on line 21. Just adding that Councilwoman Bradshaw attended the car show kickoff, and correcting the spelling of Mayor Howard Madsen's name. So that was my change that I was requesting for this, for the minutes, for the council meeting on May 14th. And so would you like to?
Mayor, what if we adopted the minutes for April 22nd, 23rd, 24th, since we have a robust number of minutes to adopt?
Yes.
And then we did,
Come back.
postponed the 25th and May 14th, as those are the two sets of minutes that you and Councilmember Price Hewish have some edits on?
I like that, and I'll second that motion if that sounds agreeable to those affected.
Great. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good suggestion. Okay, we'll now move to council reports. So we'll start with you, Councilwoman Bradshaw.
I have nothing to report this evening, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Higginson.
I don't have a report per se, Mayor. I think that we might want to be thinking about, recently two pieces of commercial property have been repurposed essentially into medical uses rather than things that might provide other services and other revenue sources to the city. I think that probably as part of our general plan discussions going forward, if Mr. Astorga could include maybe some discussion on whether there should or can be a policy whereby we restrict the repurposing of commercial property to other things.
There could
What are
be
your
an
thoughts?
overall vision policy regarding that. We would then have to implement such policy by adopting that in the land use, the zoning code. But absolutely.
I think it's something worth talking about at some point.
We had this discussion in the downtown zone, we could expand that research outside of just downtown.
Yeah. So that's that. Everything's going great, planning commission-wise. Just had two of those events come on the heels of each other and thought we might want to talk about it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Murray.
I'm glad Councilman Higginson said the same thing. I was feeling as I was going through this week's reports is that we're talking about economic development, and yet we get a lot of businesses that close early, and that takes away the phrase vibrant and nightlife and the opportunities we have to try to bring other things to Bountiful. And I had a interesting conversation at one of our service meetings. A gentleman who owns a popular food truck was contemplating looking for a place in Bountiful, but had heard him make a comment to someone else in the meeting that it's hard for him to compete against fast food restaurants. So if Bountiful continued to find that more fast foods was the capital here, then he would go elsewhere to where he could go and compete with other mom and pop type restaurants. I thought that was an interesting insight that I hadn't ever thought of. But no other things to report.
Thank you. Councilwoman Price Hewish.
Thank you, Mayor. I just would like to report the last Tuesday, we had a swearing in of the new Bountiful City Youth Council for the coming year. And it was the last day of school for all intents and purposes, and it was incredible. We were a little nervous how many people would show up, but the room was packed to the gills. We had over 50 kids get sworn in, an exceptional group of new leadership and officers, and I would like to just give them a lot of credit for their service and for just showing up on the last day of school. They didn't even have to go to school, and they came in their shirts and ties and dresses and fancy dress, and they are prepared to serve under the leadership of our new mayor, Carter Black, and our advisor, John Cook. And they're both exceptional and prepared to lead the service activities of that group going forward into the coming year. I think we're really lucky to have this exceptional group of kids. This morning, we had Power Commission meeting, and I guess I would just really like to publicly thank all of the people who work in the power department and give such exceptional expertise and leadership there under Alan Johnson, and all of the people who serve on the Power Commission. They're just really exceptional people. And it was exciting because this year we're looking at we're being able to pull power from the Colorado River Storage Project. We have good prices going forward. Our power director has hedged for the summer and for the fall, and it felt very optimistic as far as our power resources going forward. Echo Hydro plant is running at full capacity right now. Pineview is running at 3/4 capacity, and it felt just really like hopeful, and just we're under such a great team of leadership there. So that's all. I just thank everyone who serves there on the Power Commission.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Just a quick report from the South Davis Sewer District. We are holding a truth and taxation hearing, considering an $8 raise in the fees, and that will take place in June, our public hearing. And then in terms of the South Davis Fire District, they are not proposing a tax increase, but there is a proposal of a member assessment increase, so that would be that Bountiful would need to pay slightly more than we have for our portion. And they're also considering the same question that we are tonight, later on our agenda, to pick up the cost for the Tier 2 401k contributions. And so Just a report about the fire district and some of the decisions there. Councilman Bell, do you have a report?
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now consider approval of expenditures greater than $1,000 paid May 8th and 15th, 2024.
Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Now we'll consider approval of Resolution 2024-02, allowing Bountiful City to enter into an interlocal cooperation agreement for city services provided to the South Davis Rec District. Mr. Tyson Beck.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight, bringing back to you the annual renewal of the agreement we have with the South Davis Recreation District. This is to provide the services contracted through the city and utilizing city staff and resources to provide accounting services, finance, accounts payable, treasury, human resources, payroll, benefits, and information technology, as well as some lawn care and facility upkeep. So this is an annual agreement that we've been bringing back to the council each year for review and approval, proposing that we increase the fees by 3.889%. This is after doing a review of staff time and utilization of our resources to try and evaluate truly how much it costs the city staff and the city to provide these services to the recreation district. And those are included in that 3.89% increase. And this has been an ongoing agreement since 2007. So happy to discuss any details of the agreement or the fees themselves, but we are recommending the City Council approve this resolution authorizing us to re-enter this interlocal agreement for another year.
Discussion?
Are there significant changes in the duties being performed, or is this just an adjustment of rates?
Mostly just adjustments of rates, taking into consideration the COLA that is being proposed for fiscal '25, as well as any increases in supplies and materials to provide these services.
And last question, is Mr. Beck sufficiently respected for his work and appreciated, or is there frustration and angst in that service?
Speaking for myself, I do feel very respected, and I believe the board is considerate of my thoughts and opinions, and so I feel very respected in my role. I can't speak for everyone else that provides services, but I do personally.
Thank you.
I can state that this member of the Recreation District Board finds his contributions to be critically important, and we could not do without him. I do question actually if he's underestimated the hours that he's contributing, because his role has been significant in helping make budget shifts. I think it's a challenging hat that he has had to wear and to sometimes say the not fun budget news of the truth of fiscal situations. But it's been an important role and voice that he's had, and I think the work that's gone into creating the new accounting system with better coding has just been incredible, which is also why I think he's probably underestimated his time contribution.
Mayor, I'm happy to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2024-02 as printed.
Second.
Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, looks like that motion passes. Thank you for your help, Tyson. And now we'll turn the time over to Francisco to help us with the next item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a preliminary final architectural and site plan review. This is a change in use where the commercial zone indicates that any change in use requires this application to be filed and be reviewed by the Planning Commission and then reviewed by you, Council, and then you are the Land Use Authority. This is a site formerly known as the Corner Bakery Cafe, where it has been sold, and the current use that's being proposed, the new use, is a medical office medical office and just a office as outlined in the commercial zone is a permitted use. So we're not here to scrutinize the use, but simply does the proposal architecturally, does it meet the code? This is just a business as usual as far as those decisions that were made regarding in the commercial zone. The Planning Commission looked at this application, reviewed the elevations, and forwarded a positive recommendation on May 22nd, 2024. If you
Can I-
turn to,
Can I ask some,
please.
because I have not served on the planning commission, and as I read the staff report, it seems that the change in use from a restaurant to commercial is not the subject. It would be an appropriate discussion for tonight because that's not the decision before us. The decision before us is simply the architecture, which seems to be primarily focused on, quite frankly, the light fixtures.
Yeah, in one elevation on page 240, you can see the photograph on the top of the page, and then you can see the proposed elevation on the bottom. There is not much any site work being done in that the parking, everything else is already there. The change in use is what triggers that council review this application,
So if it-
simply.
if
So
it
you're
were-
absolutely right.
If it were changing from a restaurant to a oil change facility, we would be doing this same review if they were removing the solarium on the front?
It would, in answering that question, specifically, I'd have to make sure that the use was appropriate, and I believe it would in quickly looking at the use table as found in the zoning code. We would be doing the same exercise.
Okay.
As this is a commercial district, and those decisions were already made in that it's not about how I feel or is this the best fit, it's whatever the code indicates already.
But even though, a quick question then, even in the code of what can come in, can the planning commission reject the application saying, we don't want a restaurant, we don't want an office there, you can't do
No.
any of that?
They cannot, even if even if it was a conditional use permit, there are certain conditions that the planning commission could add to it, but they're very difficult to deny.
We can, if we choose to, as a council, have a different discussion about
Change in,
changing the code, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, I'm happy to report as well that our counselor, Mr. Jepson, would firmly correct the planning commission if they tried to do such a thing, as has been done in the past. So kudos to him.
he's keeping us all within the law.
It was impressive.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. Any other questions to this application?
Happy to make a motion
Please.
that we grant preliminary and final architectural and site plan approval for the change of use to the urgent care facility as presented.
I will second, and also second the fact that we should have the discussion about uses that subtract from sales tax discussions.
Yeah. And I want to say as well, I'm not trying to put extra costs on developers or hinder people making money on development at all. I just think we need to have the discussion as to what the priorities of this council and maybe by extension, the majority of residents in Bountiful would be in that regard. So,
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. And now we'll turn the time over to our engineer, Mr. Cheney.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm sure that many of you are aware of the changes that are coming to the dispatch in South Davis County, and that is necessitating some changes in our very own police dispatch center. Tonight, for your consideration, staff is recommending the award of a contract with Gould Plus Architects and their design teams to oversee the preparation of plans for changes at the police department. Bill Gould has prepared a proposal for $24,640 to prepare the plans and also to provide construction oversight as the work is done. And it would be our recommendation that the council approve that project so that we can go merrily on our way with the goal of having that fully operational by January 1st. hopefully much sooner.
Lloyd, can you explain the area that's being expanded into? It's obviously displacing something. Where are those somethings finding a new home?
Currently, those spaces are underutilized. I'm not going to say that they're not utilized, but they house some electrical equipment. There's a rest area in one of those for the dispatchers, and we're going to reclaim part of an office that's basically oversized. So it's not going to drastically impact operations of the existing dispatch center. We're going to make it certainly more efficient.
Okay, thank you.
Was the voting unanimous on whether or not the office was oversized?
The chief is smiling, so I'll take that as a yes.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mayor, I'd like to make an motion that we approve the architectural services contract to expand the dispatch center with Gould Architects in the amount of, well, it was on here, $24,640.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Thanks. We'll now consider approval of the purchase of a Rainbird IQ4 Central Irrigation Control System. Mr. Brock Hill.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I bring before you a proposal to move some of our park irrigation systems to central control. I know that this has been a topic of discussion for quite some time now, especially in the light of water restrictions and water conservation. Back in January of this year, we were tasked as a park staff to go out and to research what was out there, what the viability is that means for us as Bountiful City, and also what some of those costs would mean, and including staff time in the research and finding out what product best suits our needs. So we went to work, and I spent a lot of time talking to other cities, other irrigation managers. I've been talking to Weaver Basin Water Conservation District and Bountiful Irrigation. Been talking to product suppliers, to researchers, and everybody in the conservation world, and just trying to pick their brain about what's important when we start talking about water conservation. So many of you might know that we attended a water conservation conference not too long ago up in Logan, and this was one of the primary conversations we had, and one of the action points that we came up with as staff to move towards and make sure that we're doing everything in our due diligence to make good decisions here and move the park irrigation systems to central control, which with your goal as City Council to conserve water. We want to do our best, obviously, as a city, put our best foot forward out there and set the example. We've had a couple phone calls just this past week about that. And so I think this moving in this direction starts moving us towards that place. There was a lot of information that I needed to gather and what that meant for us as staff. Many of my staff are fairly new to the world of irrigation, so that played a big part of the decision on what product we chose. The other thing that kind of was the big driver in this whole thing was how much of our existing equipment and systems out in the field is what product's out there, right? About 95% of our stuff that's out in the ground and on the walls and the controllers is all Rainbird. So my staff is pretty well geared towards Rainbird and understand the workings, understands the programming. So that played a huge part in that. We also, researched the connectivity and the manufacturer's commitment to technology and what that means over time and into the future, because this all sounds good for now, right? But what does that mean for us in the future? Are we going to have the technology support that we need, when we run into problems? Are they committed to upgrading the system? Are they committed to helping us as staff get things installed and get stuff programmed and get us trained. So all of those things were talked about. We talked about the different types of connectivity that the systems have. Some systems are strictly cellular. Some systems have all different options, right? Cellular, fiber, networking, intranet, radio, all of those things come into play for some of these systems as well. So that played another big part of the decision there. Given our elevation change and the location of our parks, many are up on the boulevard and many are down here and some are down in the little valley, like if you think about Agate. So connectivity is going to be a huge issue for us. And that played a big part of the decision. Irrigation products that have been researched include controllers. So this goes much further than just the controller part of an irrigation system, right? There's master valves, there's pressure regulating valves, the new products that are coming out for heads and water conservation in the way that the head throws the water. Also, the age of our systems that are out there in the parks. We're getting to the point where a lot of our parks are aging out. We still have some of our controllers are still the old dial with the pin, pull pin things. So that was circa 1960. So the age of our systems played a big part of this. We looked at systems from manufactured called WeatherTrack. That's a big one out there in the market for those of you who kind of understand this a little bit. WeatherTrack is a popular one. It's been around for quite some time. Rainbird, obviously, they've come out with a product called IQ4 that's competing with WeatherTrack. So we looked at that. CalSense has been around for about the last 10 years, but it's very involved and very difficult and very expensive, and HydroRain products that we've also looked at. Other factors that were taken into consideration, and after I spoke with a lot of other water irrigation managers around the state, including our neighbors right around us, staff involvement and training of staff and getting the staff to understand and buy into the program was probably the biggest issue for them. So that played right into where I'm at with these different systems that are out there. Once we looked at that, and I visited with my own staff, we've talked about it for several hours in our own department, trying to get them on board, trying to help them understand what that means for them, what the burden is for them as we bring on this new product, and how is it going to fit into their busy schedules already, and how are they going to learn a new technology when we put a tablet in their hand and say, here you go, manage your irrigation system. There was some hesitancy there, as you can imagine. So having said all of that, our first phase of this plan, if it's approved tonight, is we want to move forward with purchasing enough irrigation equipment, including flow sensors and master valves and controllers, and possibly some rain sensors, weather sensors, all part of this package tonight. We're looking at 10 park locations as listed there in your staff report. That represents about 10% of the sites that actually have secondary water that we run with. Some of our sites are culinary, but we still plan on using the system for culinary. Some of our sites just don't have any irrigation at all, and it's like Bountiful Pond, right? But these are enough controllers to get through about 25% of our irrigated properties. We are committed to this process over time. We know that this is just going to be the first step in a long process as we start working towards water conservation, and this will give us a good idea of what this is going to do for us as a city and the water savings that we hope will come to us as we make use of this. We're also committed to upgrading our systems as needed. The pipe in the ground, the sprinkler heads that we're currently using. Some of those things are still outdated and going to have to be retrofitted to match the technology that's coming. The anticipated cost of the central control system equipment for just these 10 locations is approximately $58,610 if you're looking at the Rainbird, and then WeatherTrack is $65,200. you know, we're using your goals as a city council for water conservation. That's kind of the driving force behind all of this, which we applaud as a staff. We think it's the right decision. We know that we got to get there. We know that we can do better in our parks with our irrigation, and we're committed to do that. Also working with Weber Basin Water Conservation District, they're moving heavily into that world themselves, and they're offering a bunch of rebates to those that are going out and getting these controllers, up to 50% of the cost of the controller, not to exceed $1,500. So we know that there's rebates out there that we'll certainly go get to help us with the cost of this. We know that there's other grants that are available out there, and we're working with those water providers to help us understand what that is, to make sure that we're doing our part in finding the right kind of financing to help us with this as well. And then, of course, our own budgets, and we hope that more RAP tax would be sent our way to cover some of this cost as we go forward. So staff recommends the council approve the purchase of enough Rainbird IQ4 central irrigation control system equipment required for these 10 park locations, as previously noted in the staff report, for $58,610. And this is just for the equipment. So I want to make sure that that's understood. This is just for equipment. We will have to come back to you if we plan on using a contractor to help us install this stuff. Staff time is limited, obviously. We're having a hard time keeping up as it is. And so we will be coming back to you with a contract for contracted help to help us install this equipment as well.
Is that likely through the provider?
No, it would be an outside irrigation contractor, independent contractors. We would go through the bid process. We know that that price is going to be greater than $20,000, so we'll go through the policy as directed by the policy and make sure we go to outside contractors.
And assuming that this is approved, then what's your guess on when that would happen, when it would be installed?
Some of our irrigation controllers are going to happen relatively quickly. Some of them are already the proper controller, and all we need is just the cellular card that we can plug in, get the rain sensor going and connected, and we're off and running. So that's going to be the easy part. The other part, over the next 2 to 3 months, we plan on having all of this equipment installed.
Great. I'm sorry, I think I interrupted you. Did you get through your presentation?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions?
I have one, Mayor, if I could, or maybe two. First of all, Brock, looking at that list of properties and knowing now that that's only 25% of your park space under irrigation, that's pretty awesome. You guys do a lot.
Yeah.
And they were working over the 400 North Park today and doing a great job on it. Considering the wide variability of precipitation in our climate here, even very locally, I think it's important that we have rain sensors at each of the parks that these controllers are controlling. If they're connected somehow and they're talking to each other across the city, I mean, we can get half an inch of rain on one side of town and a sprinkle on the other. So my primary goal is to have our shared green space for residents healthy first and foremost. So if you need additional funds to have the requisite number of sensors, then that'd be my vote as well. But
yeah, that's been one of my big questions with the products in and of themselves, and it's across the board. It doesn't matter who we're talking about, if it's Weather Tracker, Rainbird, or Hydro Rain, it doesn't matter. They pull information and weather data off of the same weather stations, right? Mm-hmm. So we're pulling weather data off of Ogden and out of Salt Lake, just over the mountain. And to your point, you know, in that last snowstorm, May 6th, right, we had maybe an inch down here, mm-hmm. and 12 inches up on the boulevard. Yeah. So just this simple elevation change that we have right here is going to be huge for us to have to deal with.
Agreed.
when we're talking about this stuff. So you're correct when we talk about rain sensors.
And I think it could play in our favor as well, because we do, I think, get more than our share of precipitation because of our geography. So I'm not just saying let's water more, I'm saying let's water appropriately with sensors. So thanks for your work.
Yeah, noted, thank you.
Brock, I'm just curious. I know just in the last 3 years, we've had wide variability with our rainfall, snowfall, and the biggest snow year, and then drought conditions. But if you're just looking at like average, I'm not even sure if that applies very much anymore, but if you're looking at historical precipitation averages, how, and maybe you address this, but what, do you have any kind of anticipated amount of water we will conserve, like percentage, by utilizing this system?
I don't, and the reason I don't is because of our systems that are existing. It's difficult to get a read on what's out there and what's actually working and what's actually not working. The efficiency of our systems has been a real issue for us. So it's hard for me to get a gauge on what we're actually using right now. I mean, I could throw a number out there, but it's gonna be a number and it's gonna be a guess, right? So if we're using, for an instance, over to 400 North Park, we have the big 5,000 rotors, right? And we run those rotors for 40 minutes. It makes one turn every 2 minutes. That's how slow they move, right? So one turn, and they throw about 10 gallons a minute. So every 2 minutes, we're throwing 20 gallons. So you could do the math, and I'd have to sit there and pick every head and go through that math. But it's anticipated, and that was a big question I've had for water providers and other cities that are using the system and currently working it and dealing with it and finding faults with it and, all of those things. The last city I talked to was West Valley City, and they've seen a water savings up to 30% over what they've used in the past. So I anticipate the same thing. Hopefully we can get to 20. That's my goal, and we'll see where we go from there.
The other cool thing with the mobile access is if the sensor isn't working, you can, without having to go to the location to shut off the sprinkler, they can save in time by just shutting it off on their device and say, in the snow example, we have 2 inches down here and 12 inches up there. If we didn't even have sensors, they'd still be able to manually, from their phone or whatever device they have, just shut off the sprinklers on there.
Yeah.
The other thing too is on the master flow sensors, I don't know how many of our parks have those, but that eventually can also be a cost savings in damages, because if you set that flow sensor right, if it detects a leak somewhere down the line, my understanding of those sensors is it shuts off the water source to that line. So again, it could go running for hours without someone realizing that it's been broken, where with the sensor, it can shut it down outside that flow rate, and it will save the city costs in repairs and damages.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. The other thing that I think is important with that technology is it's going to save staff time, right?
Yeah.
Right now, if a report comes in, if I get a phone call from a concerned citizen, I have to call one of my staff members, find which one's available, and send them out. So they could come as far away from as Farmington, right, to have to make that trip down here. And then they'd have to go out there and find which valve and figure out where it is and what the leak is and what the problem is. And so just a huge amount of savings on our staff, the time that it takes to manage those things. We can shut down a system with the push of a button now. So that's really exciting to us.
That's great. What other questions do we have? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve the purchase of the Rainbird IQ4 system for the $58,000.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Brock. Okay, now we'll turn the time over to Jessica Sims for our next 2 items.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. First one is amending the Personnel Policies and Procedures Manual. As I outlined in the staff report, we currently provide a $5,000 death benefit insurance policy to our retired employees. although the benefit has been in existence for many years, few employees know of the existence of the benefit, and we have fewer beneficiaries of the deceased former employees claim it. Since 2007, we've had an average of 2 claims per year on the policies. The total premium cost to provide the policies is just over $30,000 a year. In addition to that premium cost, there is additional cost regarding the other post-employment benefit piece of this benefit. Because it is a benefit offered to retired employees, it needs to be treated differently. And as a result, we're required to keep restricted cash liability on our books, as well as some additional reporting requirements that Tyson spends a significant amount of time putting together for our financial statement at the end of the year. Currently, we provide a death benefit to full-time employees, spouses, and dependent children in the amount of $2,000, which I believe is below the cost of burial or cremation in the event that an employee would need that for their spouse or their children. So my suggestion would be to eliminate the retiree benefit and increase the spouse and dependent death benefit coverage to $10,000, which we would see a premium reduction of $24,462, and I believe provide a better benefit for our employees.
Sounds like a great idea. Any other questions or?
Do we have a notification requirement to those retired employees that we would be changing something that they may have been expecting to take advantage of at some point in their lives?
So that's a great question. They have never paid into the premium, so we're not required, we're not under a contractual obligation to provide this benefit to them at some point in the future. Changing the policy at this point would end our obligation to them in the future. From a notification standpoint, that's one of the really challenging pieces of this benefit, is that there wasn't ever any notification to the employee at the time of retirement that, hey, you have this benefit available to you, please make sure you keep your contact information up to date with us, please, and so I even reached out to URS to see if they would be willing to share contact information, just so that I could get in touch with people, and they said, no, we don't share the information. So it's pretty challenging at this point to try and track down people, either to notify them that the benefit exists or to notify them that the benefit will not exist.
Do you have any idea of the number of employees that it would currently apply to?
116.
116?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then by extraction, spouses and children, they still have?
No, so this is a policy that only applies to the retired employees. So the beneficiary on that would be the spouse of the retired employee, and potentially children if they're listed on the beneficiary form. But in the case of a spouse predeceasing the retired employee, then there would be nobody there to claim that benefit. Or if the beneficiary has, they would need to be keeping those beneficiary forms up to date in order for them to truly claim the benefit, and that isn't happening.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I had a question. Under the current policy, did an employee have to work at Bountiful City for a certain number of years to qualify for the death benefit?
Under the current policy, it just says retired. So I believe whether somebody worked a long tenure here or whether somebody worked a very short tenure, as long as they retired from the city, they qualified for this benefit.
No
Ready for a
qualms?
motion, council?
Mayor, I'll make a motion. I mean, I hope we'll make kind of our best efforts to reach those retired employees, former employees, to let them know that there's going to be a change. I understand that there's constraints in being able to reach them. But I hope we'll make an effort to do that, just so that if somebody had been really on top of their retirement packet, that they would know that is shifted. But it does seem like it makes a lot of fiscal sense and provides a more robust benefit for those current employees. So I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-03.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And then you have the next item as well.
Yes, this one is regarding employer contributions to the Utah retirement system. For our Tier 2 employees, those that are in the public safety and firefighter system, the URS is again asking for additional employee contributions in the amount of 2.27%. The legislature has allowed employers to pick up that cost on behalf of the employees, and Bountiful City has elected to do that twice so far. And then on the Tier 2 non-public safety employees, those in the hybrid system, they're being asked to contribute 0.7% of their salary for the first time. The employer option to pick up is not available currently. There was legislation that was in this last session that did not pass. Bountiful City has generously continued to put additional 401k contributions into Tier 2 employees to try and equalize the Tier 2 benefits with the Tier 1 benefits. And so picking up the cost of the Tier 2 public safety amount and also putting a 0.7% contribution into the Tier 2 non-public safety employees 401k would really just adjust the amount that we're contributing to their 401k to try and equalize them with Tier 1 employees. So without any adjustments to budget, we can accommodate both of those. It would just mean a reduction of what they're currently receiving. In one pocket, moving money from one pocket to the other pocket, I guess is a way you could look at it.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So I understand that the, obviously, age of retirement and things like that are obviously different between
Yes.
public safety and the rest of the employee pool.
Yes.
Do we feel like with what you're proposing here, setting aside the retirement age being different, that we've made both Tier 2s as close to apples as state law allows us?
I think it's interesting because with each change, right, we keep kind of getting more segregations among the tiers and among the public safety versus non-public safety. I think what Bountiful City has been trying to do is to try and not create these tier distinctions. And so, and for a good reason, right? It helps us be a more competitive employer. You know, some of our peers are choosing to not elect to pick up or to not do anything to try and make the Tier 2 non-public safety whole. And I think that ultimately we're going to be a more attractive employer because we continue to try and make those adjustments and to try and treat the employees in Tier 1 and Tier 2 as equitably as we can.
And I appreciate that and respect that and agree with that motive that, you know, we are in the system we are where we have 2 tiers.
Right.
I do want to make sure we just try and do our best to keep our Tier 2s in the different silos, as even as state law allows us as well.
Meaning public safety versus non-public safety in Tier 2?
Yes.
Well, you have a huge difference in contribution between Tier 1 public safety and non-public safety. So I don't think you can ever equalize Tier.
I don't think we're ever going back. Tier 1 is never coming back.
Yes.
The legislature is,
Yeah.
you know, has ended that program, and
Right.
those in Tier 1 should enjoy Tier 1.
Right.
But Tier 2, Tier 2 is an interesting and different challenge, and it does feel like there are some known and accepted and really good reasons why retirement ages and things like that are different given the different types of work and jobs that are done. But to the extent when we're trying to think about picking up or, you know, how that employee is going to feel day to day compared to one of their colleagues, that's an area that I personally am just concerned that we're staying as close to keeping those similar as possible.
Right. And the views of the staff and council may change as Tier 1 or Tier 2 continues to get smaller and smaller and ultimately retire out of the system, and then Tier 1 would be the only tier, well, unless they come up with something else, but, yeah, it's a continuing challenge to try and make sure that we are having our employees feel like they're being compensated equitably for the work that they do, despite the changes in the retirement system.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the proposed employer contribution to the URS as outlined in the report for Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees per the 401K contributions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you for being here tonight, Jessica. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn temporarily to an RDA meeting with a separate agenda?
Could we potentially temporarily adjourn to an RDA meeting with a separate agenda?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned to a separate RDA meeting with a separate agenda. Do we need to have a break, or can we go right into it? We're good? Okay. Okay, so we are convening as a redevelopment agency of Bountiful City, and we would like to consider the approval of the minutes from November 28th, 2023. Any corrections or changes?
Move to approve those minutes as printed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. And now we'll consider an RDA loan for the construction of the Brooks Mixed-Use Development located at 220 North Main Street. Excuse me. We'll turn the time over to, is that you, Francisco?
That's me.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We received a loan request from the Brooks LLC requesting $450,000 to wrap up the construction of the Brooks redevelopment site. On page 3, as you can see, we have the site plan of what we've approved, where we've got a total of 20 residential units in the form of 9 townhouses, 3, 3, and 3. As you can see here, they're the buildings that are somewhat separated other than the north building. And then 3 units above the blue space, as you can see there on Main Street, on the north side, and then 8 units above the lower area, right on the corner of 200 North and Main Street. The applicant indicates they're providing $950,000 out of developer equity and $2.35 million from their construction lender. They anticipate that the total construction would be $3.75 million, and therefore they request this amount. In the RDA, since 2005, we've issued 18 loans, as indicated on page 4 of the packet, where the average tends to be a little bit lower than what's being requested at $292,000. Did I say that right? I did. The applicant's currently requesting $450,000. And having this loan go through would not delay the application for the last phase of the project, which is the Main Street side. Bo Odzawala, who represents the LLC, was not able to be here. However, Brixton Call is here, and he could answer any questions that you might have. In looking at it, we do recommend that you approve the loan for the value of $450,000 for the amortization period of 10 years with a balloon payment at 5 years and an interest rate at 3% to be repaid monthly. Just like all the other loans, we would always be in second position as the primary lender. A financial institution is always first. And we did add a specific condition as the applicant has not identified the tenant just yet of the commercial spaces, in that they've indicated that as they start selling the units, the residential units through their certificate of occupancy, they would be able to most likely repay the loan much faster than the anticipated 5-year balloon payment call. So we do request that if you approve this loan request, that we add a fund disbursement clause, that the fund to be dispersed to the applicant once the applicant identifies the tenants of the commercial space. It's about 2,500 square feet of commercial development on that storefront along Main Street. That would be it. We have the elevations as of the two buildings. These are the two last phases that they're about to start construction. Building A, which is the northern building, and Building C is the 200 North Main Street building. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, and I think Brixton Call would be here to answer questions that the RDA board might have for both staff and the applicant.
Thanks. I have a question. When you started on the project, when you started construction, did you think that you had the funding that you needed? And if not, what changed?
Yeah, originally when we started, we did have the funding, but originally we started with just one phase, and we weren't going to do 2 phases, and we were going to be renting out the townhomes instead of selling them off. And then as just the economy has changed over the last few years and different things, then it's just made more sense to break them up into 2 different pieces, and that's made it necessary to get this funding to move forward.
Question, if I could, Mayor. Mr. Astorga, have we required other builders to identify a tenant before we've extended RDA funds to them?
Most of the other applicants, traditionally, they've been the developer and the tenant. Capitol Theater at the dance studio is what I'm thinking. Even El Matador across the street, they've had the role of being the developer / tenant, where this is more of a different animal in that it's a developer that would then be leasing out or even selling out that commercial pad, that they would have the opportunity. Other than our out of norm, out of the ordinary at Renaissance Town Center with the unique grant to loan condition that we issued for a significant amount of money. But it's usually the developer / business owner coming in before us.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question also just about the identification of a tenant, because I was not familiar with that condition. How formalized are we anticipating? And I also would guess I would ask our attorney, city attorney, what would be appropriate here. Would we want to see a signed lease, evidence of good faith negotiations with said tenant, or what kind of proof of tenant identification and like the terms of when the tenant would be moving in? There's a lot of vagueness in the language there, just identification of a tenant. So did you have anything anticipated?
Yeah, because this is a construction loan, they obviously need to use the funds as soon as possible. So if they already had the specified tenant, we wouldn't be putting that specific condition in the term of the loan. So it would be simply, and that's why we kept the language vague, as letting us know who's coming in. It would be as simple as that. However, you are the board, and you could decide what level of scrutiny you need to provide. They need to provide.
I think our thought was that it would be a lease agreement.
I think that's appropriate too. So couldn't we, that's not really clear in the report.
Yeah, we could.
That's true.
We could clarify that just in your motion, that the loan would be funded upon demonstration of a tenant through a signed lease agreement. for example. Yeah, it's a good catch.
For both buildings? For one of the two buildings?
I would say both, but your call.
Mine?
The boards,
Oh, sorry.
through the proper motion.
Before anyone might make a motion, we had a question down here. 3%. I recall we had some discussion at a prior RDA meeting about that percentage. And I seem to recall that we raised it because of market conditions to 3%, that maybe it had been lower. But can the staff enlighten me on that?
The reason why we went to a 7% with Mr. Broadhead was because he was requesting an extension of a loan that was going to be, he had a balloon payment that was due December 1st of last year. And he came in with a unique request to come in and extend that for another specific period. I'm thinking it was 2 years. Was it 2 years? And through the recommendation by staff, and through your action, what was done was that we entertain his extension, but with a higher percentage.
So the rest of the loans that are listed in the agenda on page 4, those are all at 3%?
As far as I know, we've been consistent 3% for quite some time.
I had to take that column out of the table because of space. But yeah, they're all 3%.
If you were Galen, you would just print it microscopically.
I could have, but he has Superman vision.
I know.
Thank you. That helps with the question we were trying to remember down at this end of the dais. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the construction RDA loan for the Brooks mixed-use development at 220 North Main Street with the conditions we've discussed.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We're excited about your project. It looks like it's going to be nice.
Mayor, can I make one other comment?
Please, yeah.
Appreciate you being here. And though I know that developing right now is brutal with the market conditions, I think it's favorable to us as council members and as Bountiful residents that those homes are going to be for sale. So, sorry for the difficulty, excited for the outcome.
Well, we're excited too, and we're excited it's moving along now.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Mayor, before we move on, I'm just sorry, because it did seem a little, again, tiny bit vague to me. Is the conditions discussed that there would be signed lease agreements for both buildings? Okay.
I have the language here that I'm going to add, exactly as I said, through the verification of a lease agreement. I'm going to add that to the fund disbursement to the end of that sentence under item 7.
And I recall
That's what
that
I
as a
heard.
condition.
Great, thank you. Does that clarify? Great. Okay, so now we will reconvene.
Mayor, I'd like to adjourn from the
yes.
RDA meeting.
Thank you.
And join our council meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Then I'd like to convene in a closed session to discuss the acquisition or sale of real property pending litigation and/or the discussion of the character or competency of an individual.
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Price Hewish. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, thank you.
right. Roll call.
Thank you. That's right. We get to use our favorite device. Thank you so much.
It has to be a roll call vote to go to closed session, so that we have to vote individually and identifiably. And I can't hide my vote over here. You should just vote no, just.
Councilmember Matt Murray.
Yes. Yay.
Councilmember Jesse Bell.
Aye.
Councilmember Higginson.
Aye.
And Councilmember Bradshaw.
Aye. I wasn't going to vote until he pulled my name.
Okay, we are adjourned to a closed session. Thank you.